Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, ESO enthusiasts of all ages, welcome to this special edition of ESO Weekly. Joining you today are your regular show hosts, Josh and Kyle. Kyle, say hi to the good people.
Hello.
And joining us today is a very, very, very special guest. Probably caught you off guard if you're watching this right now. He goes by the name of Nick Konkle, but around here we like to refer to him as the Konk. He is known for being the lead gameplay designer over at Zenimax Online Studios, currently working on The Elder Scrolls Online. Nick, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the cast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Hey, how did you guys come up with Konk? Oddly enough, that was what a lot of people called me in high school. I don't know how. Why do people gravitate to that? Why do people gravitate towards my last name? I don't know.
It's just very unique, I guess. I want to call you Mr. the Konk, by the way. Just Mr. the Konk. That's your name.
Just for formality there, yeah. I appreciate that.
I know, I'm reminded of like a conch shell for some reason, but Kyle was the one that actually came up with it, so I don't know. I think it's pretty endearing though, if I do say so myself.
It is a term of endearment for sure.
Yeah. I'll make that my screen name.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so before we dive into these excellent lineup of questions, we can say that because we wrote them, we want to go ahead and go over exactly what the lead gameplay designer title entails. What is the average day in the shoes of the Konk at Zenimax Online?
Well, these days, the average day involves a lot of reviewing of the game as it is in right now, which is a pretty exciting time. A lot of playing the game. Basically, anything to do with monsters, with progression, with balance, with classes or combat or controls. All those things are in my team's purview. So each member of the team sort of has a local area that they work on and own very directly, and then I do a lot of reviewing of the overall and how they're all coming together.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into the first question here, and this question actually comes out of the fact that Kyle and I have had the opportunity to talk with a lot of playtesters who've actually had the chance to get their grubby little hands on the Elder Scrolls Online at various events such as PAX East and things like that. And although overall the feedback was extremely positive, they love the combat. There was one thing, and that is the fact that it feels a bit more floaty than it normally does. And by that I mean how in the past installments of the test series, like Oblivion and Skyrim, you got a lot of feedback. You know, somebody bashed your shield in, you felt it, the screen shaked a little bit, and it had some real weight behind it. I guess my question to you would be, is this just a result of, the earlier builds of the game, the beta builds and stuff like that? And what steps is ZOS taking to correct this?
Yeah, it's definitely something that we received a lot of feedback on, in particular with some of those earlier builds, like the ones that we had brought to PAX East in Boston or to E3, which was the same build, where that was maybe a criticism of the game system, that we felt like we had a good core there, a good interplay between what the monster was doing and what I was doing, movement, action, but maybe the actual moment of impact didn't feel good, particularly on melee attacks, but to a certain extent on spells and ranged attacks as well. We've been working on that pretty steadily for this whole year about improvements to that, and some of those have been visible in some of the later shows, like at QuakeCon and at Gamescom, where we've added special animations for all the various directions of impact and different ones for lights versus heavy attacks. So you can really help sell that moment of reaction in the enemy, where when you hit him, he goes, you hit him from the right, he goes to the left. If you kill him, he goes flying to the left. If you hit him from the top, he sort of crouches down. You get really a custom experience of what type of attack killed him. And then not just the melee attacks, but also the spells as well. We wanted to make sure that those had sort of spectacular moments as well, as the melee ones did. And a lot of times you're at range, so you don't get as good of a feel. So we focused a lot on killing blows and selling those, right? Having a guy die with lightning and turn into a pile of smoldering ashes, or killing him with fire and having him char his corpse, and custom deaths for everything in the different types of spells and abilities in the game. And that's kind of, I think, the first pass of things we did. Then recently we've been focusing even more on how I react to the moment of impact, how me as a player reacts when I'm swinging my sword. And we've been focusing in particular on a thing called meta viscosity, where when my weapon strikes the enemy, what does it do? Yeah, sure, he's going to go flying, but making sure that in the animation when I hit him, I actually slow down. I actually have some catch when I'm striking him, so you can feel that moment. And then if you combine that with some camera shake and with the directional impact VFX, you can really start to improve that feel in the moment of impact. And then then just sort of expanding that out and propagating that out to all the different weapon types, making sure they all have different characters has really been the large bulk of what we've been focusing on for this last year. And I'm excited. We've got a lot of positive feedback about the changes, that people saw in some of the more recent trade show builds, and there's even quite a bit since then that's going out to beta. So I'll be really excited to see what everyone feels when it all comes together.
I would like to give you the opportunity to speak towards some people's big concerns about watching the QuakeCon gameplay footage was the fact that bow and arrows, the animations and things like that didn't seem all there, and our answer to that, and hopefully you can confirm for us, is just a result of it being an earlier build. It's beta build is what it is.
Yeah, I think you basically nailed it, which is that show at QuakeCon was the first time we had unveiled first-person mode in the fully supported way that it was. So yeah, I think it's safe to say a lot of those animations were on earlier stages of their polish. And then I know there was a couple of bugs that had snuck in with the arrows disappearing that made it feel a little bit less polished. So those were some of the downsides that crept in. But we felt it was really important to show at QuakeCon that we had really worked hard on this Elder Scrolls experience, that we had put the compass in, that we put in the first person mode and minimized out the UI so that the experience of playing the game felt very Elder Scrollsy. And then those little bugs, those animation issues, they crept in as they often do, or in the earlier stages of development. But hopefully everyone got the feeling of, okay, when you're playing the game, this actually looks like an Elder Scrolls game and plays like an Elder Scrolls game, and we'll fix the bugs. In fact, we've already fixed those, and we've also done quite a bit of polish on those animations, the bow as well as all the melee attacks.
Excellent. I have to say, all the polls we've taken, the whole bow gameplay is definitely the most popular out of any playstyle in the Elder Scrolls. Seems like everyone wants to go stealth and use a bow and arrow. Yeah,
we're getting a lot of that. That sort of reflects what we're seeing as well with our own metrics internally for our beta tests. That is really popular, and it turns out the sneak opener with a bow is quite powerful, both in PvE and in PvP. It does a pretty good chunk of bonus damage and stuns the guys. It's a pretty great opening attack. So we're seeing that happen quite a bit. That advantage, that traditional Elder Scrolls advantage of oops, there's 3 guys. Oh, now there's 2, and now the fight's actually. So it was pretty exciting when we got that system all in and working. I was quite a ways back now, but I still remember it pretty clearly the first time I one-shot a guy with a bow, and I was like, yes.
Absolutely. You should be rewarded for taking the time and patience to crouch down and move really slowly. So it's much appreciated.
Yeah, especially since, sneaking around in our game costs stamina.
Right.
Yes.
Requires a good chunk of patience. And, if you can get yourself in a good firing position like that, then it feels really appropriate to get a reward. And of course, you need to do slightly mitigating effects to balance that for PvP. You need to tweak your numbers a little bit there. But for the most part, you still want that same experience of, look, if I took the time to move slowly, consume my stamina, get myself in a good position, avoid getting detected, and I pull off a really good opening shot, I should get the appropriate reward. And that's something that we wanted to make sure, carried over from previous Elder Scrolls game.
Oh, right.
There's no feeling like it. I'm convinced.
Oh man.
Remember, we had one playtest. This is, probably spilling, maybe.
Oh, please.
A little bit more than I ought to. But I remember one playtest where I had accidentally set the sneak attack damage, particularly with bows, too high, and we did a PvP playtest, and there was a couple people in our QA group who knew about the mistake that I had made, but most people didn't. And man, the numbers those guys put up.
Oh, jeez.
Just so many. What just killed me? So, we've got things back in sanity right now where it feels really good and it's worth it to sneak up on someone, but you don't have, accidental multipliers that lead to people getting one shot. So, I think it's a good system. We feel pretty good about, how bows and sneak attacks is feeling now. And, a lot of what people saw, of course, is initial. So I'll be anxious to see what people, when they get in there and play it themselves, how they react.
Epic.
Absolutely.
All right, so top of the news lately has been the whole guild store system. We know that it basically allows people within the guild to put their wares up for a set price and people can choose to purchase them or not. But then we heard through an interview actually with you, I believe it was at Eurogamer, that there would be places throughout Tamriel for non-members to actually purchase goods through that guild store. So could you go through some more detail to whether this is true, and if so, a little more information on the system?
Yeah, so I sure can. It's built into how the Cyrodiil keep ownership and territory control works. Basically, if you have a guild with 50 people in you and you capture a keep or something like that, or could be, doesn't have to be 50, it could be a huge number, it could be 500, but you capture and own a keep, it's sort of your responsibility to make sure it's protected. But one of the benefits that you get is anyone can come visit your keep and then access your guild store, and you can get the benefit of the economy of being able to sell to potentially everyone, who comes by, which is a huge group of people. And then because of the way the teleportation network in the game works, if you own a keep, it's pretty certain that you'll be able to get to it instantly without needing to PvP or do any risk. So it isn't necessarily like, hey, the guild store is only for people who are PvPing. It's actually a system that's just open, and this is the place where you happen to go to see the front end for it. And because there's numerous keeps available for, and numerous territory available for each alliance, there's actually a bunch of different stores that you can travel to try to find deals, right? You can find one where an item is selling for a lot and buy it from a different one and take advantage of the the inefficiency that sometimes exists when you have multiple markets like that. So it helps us have a bit more robust economy to have that kind of open storefront like we did.
Right. So just to confirm, only guilds that have a keep within Cyrodiil can sell stuff to non-members.
That is the current plan.
Okay. Well, I can see already that those guilds that have those keeps are going to start charging members to come in just so they can sell their wares to all those people that come to that keep, which would be a very interesting tactic. I would do that. If I was a guild, I owned a keep, I can sell my wares to all non-members that go to that keep, then I'm going to start charging people to come into my guild just to sell their stuff. Just a little, off the top.
We're quite a bit more generous with our keeps than that. You can actually teleport, and you don't have to be a member of the guild to teleport into the guild keep. So that, because we want to make sure that the game is as open as possible. So you can certainly access anyone's guild stores. But yeah, that's absolutely something you can do. If you want to be a guild that's more economically focused, right, you can make sure you fill your guild store with, a certain style of economy. Like, hey, we're going to be the guild that sells all the best blacksmithing weapons in the game, and everyone will know that this is where you come for the best stuff, but we're going to charge an arm and a leg for it because that's how we're choosing to sort of try to make our money. Or you can play it a different way. You can use the guild store more internally. So we wanted it to be just basically a market that players could use for themselves.
That's cool. Josh, we're doing that, and we're selling nothing but sweet rolls.
I don't know, man. I don't want to be a part of your guild, at least not to trade with. You sound pretty cutthroat.
Come on,
man.
man.
I want to charge people the privilege.
If they want to sell their wares through my guild store that goes to everyone else, well then, you start giving me some gold. Give me some gold.
Wow. That's harsh, man. I
Whatever,
don't know
man.
about that.
Whatever. Something I wanted to ask you, though. What led you to the decision to go with this whole guild store system versus going through the global auction house system, or maybe even just a regional auction house system that we see in other MMOs?
Well, I think it probably is what fit with the theme and sort of the technical makeup of our game. You don't necessarily want to do a global auction house for a game with one giant server, because that generally just leads to all of the best gear being available at very, very cheap prices, and at all times it can trivialize the game, right? You don't have a healthy economy when there's no restrictions towards getting the best stuff in the game. You can just walk on and buy it all. So we definitely didn't want that, and what made a lot of sense for us was putting it in this territory control game, right? Cyrodiil is a really important part of the world. It absolutely is, and it was the subject of Elder Scrolls Oblivion, obviously, and it's not like it's something we wanted to downplay. And we had available all these keeps, and in the knowledge that they would be sort of transitory, right? People are going to take them over, and this was a really good system for making sure that guilds would feel a lot of investment in controlling and holding their keeps. And then on top of that, it has a whole lot of economic benefits of like what we were describing, where, players can play the economy of going from one, guild store to another, on a different keep and taking advantage of different prices between the two.
All right. I think people will enjoy that info for sure. And you're selling me on the whole guild store thing, because I know personally I was really bummed about there not being an auction house system, and I thought only guild items within my guild would be able to sell stuff. But this is, you're selling me on the idea for this.
Yeah. I think we've read that stuff too, right? A guild store is a little different, but we definitely encourage people to get in there and give it a shot before, I think it'll look really and play really familiar to a lot of people. You can still go to these places and search for goods and buy the goods that you want, and then there's just a lot of ways in which it fits into what we're doing for our game. So hopefully when people get in there, they'll see a lot more of it working and why we made the decisions we did.
Sure. As long as you can still play the economic game and buy and then sell high and things like that, all these unique ways people discover to make money in MMOs, that's always been kind of a gameplay within itself. And so as long as this auction house system feeds into that, which from the sound of it most certainly will, I think a lot of people will be happy with it. All right, so for our next question here, we're going into items, loot, something that everyone loves. And what was that?
Near and dear, of course.
Oh, yes. Near and dear to every raider's heart, especially. World of Warcraft particularly comes to mind, and sorry, I have to bring it up because honestly, you can't have a good discussion about MMOs without bringing up WoW. Anyway, in World of Warcraft, you have these things called legendary items. Maybe one person would have them per realm. They were very, very rare to get, and I have to say, as a casual player, it was so cool to see somebody walk through town with one of these awesome items and just gawk at it, really. We know that the Elder Scrolls universe has these cool things called Daedric artifacts that people are crazy about. Now, we know these artifacts will be tied into the Fighters Guild, but will there be any unique and really hard to get armors that only the most devoted of players can obtain?
Yeah, so I guess we're going to be getting into an area where I want to toe the line between letting people discover things for themselves and giving out enough information so people can get a sense of what the system is. But first, I think let me just correct an impression that Daedric artifacts would only play a role in the Fighters Guild. I'm not 100% sure where it came from, but it's definitely the case that there's Daedric artifacts that play a role in various quests and not just in the Fighters Guild. So you can look forward to a whole bunch of them all over the place. But as far as endgame itemization goes, the Daedric artifacts themselves, the Mace Mullock Ball, and many others, I wouldn't expect to see those, but other artifacts that people are familiar with, things like Oriel's Bow and other things that are a part of, sort of Elder Scrolls lore and mega weapons, you can expect to see stuff like that coming in the future, and some of those will be really unique and rare.
Nice.
That sounds great.
All right, was that a sufficient amount of teaser information? I want to give exactly the right amount.
I want a complete list of what is going to be in the game, and then I want that list in my inventory when I start.
I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
Hey, one word, Wabbajack. That's all I'm saying.
Let's. I'll just say this: no spoilers.
Oh.
All right.
You'll find it. It'll be great.
So now everyone who's played Oblivion, or at least hopefully everyone that's played Oblivion, has become familiar with the whole Imperial City Arena thing. Where, all warriors could test their mettle. So you would go there, you'd start as a little pit dog, and then you'd go through and become a grand champion. It's just a great hallmark of Cyrodiilic gameplay. So has there been any talks at all about adding something like this to ESO, be it in the Imperial City, because I know you guys are working on that. But if not, could we potentially see a dueling system?
I think neither of those things you can expect to see in for launch. But yeah, as you say, There's discussions of the Imperial City, and a lot of times, I've mentioned this before to some people. I don't know how much it gets out there, but when we talk about releasing our expansions, our post-launch content, we're talking about things that are thematic, that are kind of DLC style. And so when you get something like the Imperial City, you don't just get a zone, you sort of get support stuff, things like advances in the PvP system, new siege weapons, things that you can do inside of the Imperial City that are new and not like the rest of the gameplay. We make sure when we were plotting out our sort of roadmap for what we do with post-launch content, that each one had a theme and a story that would be really exciting for players. So there's one that's about the Thieves Guild, and there's one that's about the Imperial City, and you can expect that supporting features like that will be a part of those.
Cool. Anything on like dueling, like in some MMOs you can go up, select to do a duel with them, they agree, and you guys can duke it out. Is there anything like that, or eventually?
I've got no actual sort of confirmed info on that, but it's something that we're aware of, and I think if players demand for it hard enough, then it'll probably come sooner rather than later. But
you just set a challenge, my friend.
I know, right?
You might have just opened up the floodgates.
People can demand pretty hard for a lot. I could say 4 or 5 other things that people would all feel pretty strongly about as well.
Right.
But, we do nothing but read feedback and look at, and not just stuff from our beta, but from forums, from articles, from Reddit, from everywhere. Just looking at what people are looking for in the game, because we want to make sure that the experience is really what people want out of it at launch.
All right, so the next question has to do with mounts, another thing that people particularly like, especially in MMOs. We have a lot of lore-friendly mount options in the Elder Scrolls universe. Things like the Senche battle cats that the Khajiit have, and I'm pretty sure Kyle has mentioned something about a pygmy silt strider a couple of times. Yeah, something like that. But will there be anything besides just regular horses? Are you guys looking into having those racial mounts? It's something some other MMOs have done extremely well in defining your character and defining yourself by your race and your roots.
Well, so I worry a little bit about what I'm starting to say as a theme. It's funny how, when earlier on when we announced we're answering a lot more questions about things that are in development, and now that we're coming up on our launch day, we're starting to talk about things that are more and more being considered for post-launch or one of our packs. We will have different types of horse mounts with launch, unique ones, and different ways they can be customized appearance-wise as you progress with them. But for launch, horses are the mount.
Okay. So we're looking at maybe like armors and stuff, different bridles, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you bringing it up. Things like saddlebags. Different types of saddles, or armor. Like that sort of thing.
Awesome.
Guild emblems.
The release date for ESO is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I can tell you that so I mentioned this before about how our plan for post-launch content is very oriented on themes, and one of the themes is about guilds and making sure that is the fully supported progression breadth system that you really want it to be, in addition to the key sort of social features that we felt were the core of it. So that one's coming, and stuff like being able to portray your guild out in the world would be things that would be included in there.
Awesome. Looking forward to some of that post-launch stuff. Okay, throughout all the development, we know ESO has been going on for 5 years since development of the whole your custom engine and all that kind of stuff. What has been your favorite part of the development, and why?
Oh, man, I love this question. Okay, so I can talk about this forever, by the way. I think I started February 2008, so that's almost 6 years now. I think they're going a little bit longer than that. So it's been quite a ride. I can think of a few times, but the one that really stands out to me, and I think you guys might have some sense of this, I think the first time I was participating in the AVA, in the sort of the Alliance War stuff, that moment I got where I recall we basically had banded this group together of maybe 20 or 30 people to defend this one particular location. And there was a horde of people who were just escorting the object through us, basically. And we had set up this one last opportunity to stand. And we were looking down the lines at each other. We knew they were going to come through this one choke point, and we were like, "Yeah, we got a pretty good group here. There's 30 of us." And then over the crest of the hill, just comes this mass of people, and just hundreds and hundreds of people all escorting this, and we're all just looking at it like, we are so screwed. What is about to happen? That was kind of the first moment that the tech really proved out, like, oh my goodness, we can have 200 people fighting in one battle at once, and they just steamroll us. But it's still, I think there's a moment in one of our early videos that we had that's on YouTube, the Introduction to Elder Scrolls, where all the guys are all jumping over the wall.
Yes.
And that was a flashback to me to that moment that had happened maybe 2 years earlier in our play test, where I was like, yes, that was what it was like. That's the moment of just like, holy crap, how many people are going to come over that hill? They don't stop. They're just keep coming. So
I believe both of you guys have possibly gotten a chance to play in the AVA.
Whoa, what? Who? What?
Yeah.
Us? I don't know if we can say that.
I have no recollection of the events in question.
I don't want any lawsuits going on. This reminds me of something, and I'm only going to say one phrase. I don't know if you've heard about it or not, but it's called "Remember the Chalamo."
Of course I heard about the Chalamo. That's all.
Chalamo!
Because we were there. Oh, I mean, we might have been there.
Yeah. Right after that weekend, we were all talking about all the stories that people had, because I think that really sums up what's so cool about persistent large-scale PvP is just what happened last night in Cyrodiil.
Nice.
What things occurred, and that story I think really stood out. All the people who had participated or had read the stories about it were all pretty excited about how that had gone down. And me as a gameplay designer, as a balanced designer, I'm really excited about it too, because what it proved out was that we built the ability mechanics in such a way that a well-organized group of people in the sort of playing in a defended manner, understanding the mechanics of the game, could defeat a hugely superior numerical force if they weren't equally coordinated, which is exactly what you want, right? Not a large-scale system is, it's maybe less fun if one guy can just kill 3 because his gear's better, but when you get to that 12 people can take out 36 because they're coordinated, that's awesome. You really want that small, tight, organized group to have power if they're just performing well enough. And that to me was the proof case of it. Like, yep, we've got the system that allows that to occur, and I was pretty excited about it. Plus, I got the whole recap from people. I wasn't there myself at the job, but I got the whole recap of all the different sort of guerrilla tactics that occurred. Hiding on walls, hiding in ledge as it was captured, recapturing. Lots of really cool taking advantage of the mechanics of the system itself. So I think honestly, that's one of my favorite moments as well. Just hearing how all of these mechanics that we had thrown in were really working as we expected them to. In this large scale test, because as much as we can test things internally and do stuff focused, you don't really get a sense of it until you get a whole bunch of people who are pretty hardcore players, and only then do you really know how your systems are going to work, because those are the people who are going to be driving the metagame.
We seem to be doing very well. Just 2 suggestions before we move on. 1, I think you should rename that Keep Chalamo, and 2, we suggested that there may be a drunkard in a tavern or something that would voice what had happened that day at the Chalamo.
Actually, just before I walked over here to talk with you guys, I talked with Brian Wheeler, and indeed there will be an epic poem.
Yes!
Oh my gosh! So, I'm sorry, I just wet myself. Excuse me, gentlemen. I need to change my pants. That's great, though. But when you come out of a PvP experience as exciting as that, and you come out with these war stories, and you've done something right with the balancing, where strategy trumps numbers, and something I'm very much looking forward to in the Elder Scrolls Online, without a doubt.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that, and I have to say it almost feels lucky, just because when there's that many things coming together. So many abilities, and we really let set players up for that beta test to be able to do anything, try anything they wanted. It wasn't everything in the game, but it was a good chunk of it, and that very few people, outside of finding a few bugs here and there, were able to make super builds or things that were broken. It feels pretty good as an achievement. And I think by and large, people were trying different strategies, finding them effective, or if they found them ineffective, trying a new one, trying different classes. And on the whole, there wasn't any, looking at the metrics, there wasn't any one thing that was like, whoops, we have to fix that right now, other than there's a stacking bug where people could get infinite move speed. But other than that one, it was pretty much
I've heard about that one too, yes.
Yeah, we're turning knobs rather than just looking at anything as far as wholesale changes. So that was a pretty successful test. I feel really good. Now, as far as development goes, you guys asked for what my favorite moment was, and as a player, it was definitely that first time I saw people rushing over the hill. But as developer, I think it's almost always that situation of where you've put a whole bunch of stuff in the game, but you never really had the opportunity to have players test it. And when it mostly works on the first try, you're kind of like, yes, it's when you turn in your
It
rough
works.
draft.
It works.
And you're like, yeah, take that feature.
A little fist pump to yourself. Yeah, nailed it. Yep, it's a lot of variables to take into account. All right, so now that we're still on the subject of PvP, I'd like to ask you about something that we've actually speculated about a bit here on the ShoddyCast, and that is the idea of maybe having a bounty system in Cyrodiil and in PvP, where somebody takes a bounty out on a player, or some player has a certain amount of money that's on top of their heads, and you kill that player and you get that. Any sort of systems like that you could hint about?
The main thing we have available at launch is a sort of a couple more, something similar, but maybe not quite as directed as what you're describing. We have a number of quests out there that you can do where it's things like specifically target this alliance, specifically target this class in order to achieve a certain objective. And then we also have things like revenge kills or helping an ally, achievements for like, oops, that guy killed me, and then I came back and took him out, and it'll give you a big like, yeah, I got him.
That's cool.
So we have some stuff like that are more of the moment to moment play, and that's what we'll have for launch.
So my question is about the justice system. People who have played the Elder Scrolls games have loved not only the freedom that you get in these games, how open-ended they are, but the fact that there's consequences to accompany those freedoms that you have. Now, you guys talked about, we know it's not going to be in at launch, but you talked about having it in as a post-launch feature. There was also an article months and months ago that talked about when you guys were going to introduce the justice system, it would be with like a Thieves Guild or something like that. Now, could you speak more to this system at all? Will it follow the Oblivion Skyrim trend of do I get to choose if I'm arrested or fined? And on top of that, will there be a sort of like a karma system, or fame and infamy, where if I'm a bad person that likes to steal a whole lot of sweet rolls, do I get bad karma for that? Is there anything like that?
All right, so I'll go with my standard disclaimer before I start talking about this.
Sure.
It's not a system that is, has not been implemented yet, and there are any number of steps between here and there. So the things I say are subject to change. All right, disclaimer made. All right, so I may have to say that at the end too, just to make sure, because sometimes it messes up there. So yes, as you guys are saying, one of the content patches we've discussed is one oriented on the Thieves Guild and on justice, guards and protections and watching, and in the skill line as well associated with that. You can have things like pickpocketing or distraction, stuff that people would really like out of a Thieves game. So as far as the individual goes, yeah, we've talked about having a reputation and having that be persistent and people knowing you depending on what you've done in the past. And we've even thrown out a number of sort of initial prototypes of that happening. So I don't want to give too much away about where we are right now. But that's something we're actively working on, because I think it's something that's near and dear to a lot of people, a lot of Elder Scrolls fans' hearts. Is it's just how does the justice and thieving and bounty system work in the game. So we're actively working on it.
Cut the crap. Am I going to be thrown in jail or not?
I wish I could say it.
All right.
I really want to.
All right. So, okay. We did all the hard questions, so I'm going to ask you an easy one.
No, yeah, please.
What has been your favorite class and favorite play style to use since, you kind of built the game?
This is the sneaky trap question, though, isn't it? This is the one where
Sure.
As far as what builds I generally like, for a long time, I always answered that with, I like doing weird builds. I like doing things that are sort of anti-archetype, like, oh, let me try playing, a caster bow user or a heavy armor healer or stuff that is not necessarily what people would expect. And I did that for a really long time when our progression system was sort of in its infancy for like a year, and that was how I always answered that question. And it's funny, in maybe the last few months or so, that's kind of changed, because I feel like it took. The people who are playing our game are actually doing that themselves now.
Right.
And I'm kind of like a hipster. I don't really want to do what everyone's doing, right? I want to be the guy who's doing it first, and it's cool. So now,
a rebel.
Yeah, exactly right. I kind of switched gears to, now I'm trying out the really super core builds, like the pure light armor mage, all nuke all the time, or the pure sneak medium armor, stay invisible in ambush at various periods of times, and then the pure tank one. I've been seeing how far I can push those, and if I can do anything maybe subtly interesting off of them right now. I've got a lot of luck at it. I've got a lot of success out of the Dark Exchange ability on the sorcerer, which is one that allows you to, for over a channel period of time, trade stamina for health and magicka. And that's kind of like, I don't know, what you might call like an enabling build or enabling ability, something that unlocks certain potential builds, and that allows you to have so much magicka that you can really afford to throw a lot of high cost abilities on your bar. And if you combine that with sort of an ice staff, resto staff, all magicka build, it's pretty overwhelming. There's a lot of spells getting thrown around there. So I think that's probably what I've been throwing out, and that's what I've been messing around with. That's my favorite build right now. And I don't know what it'll be next month. It changes.
Right. As it should.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the fun of getting to be one of the devs on the project is, it's my job to try out all the different things, right? I'm doing work when I go home and play and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, our friends at Tamriel Foundry have been speculating, and they see builds in the Elder Scrolls Online as more of a... you're looking for builds, like say somebody goes in the first month in the Elder Scrolls Online and makes one of the sickest builds around. The open-ended system allows people to then look at that build that is so popular and kicking so much ass and counter it with your own build. Actually select abilities and things that are specifically designed for that player. And if that's the case, they're thinking, oh, well, you do have this kind of just self-balancing system where the players are the ones that are balancing the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, my favorite example of this, even though it's a little on the nose, I'll just say it because it's really direct, which is when we were first making all the werewolf and vampire abilities, and I was showing them off to people in our various presentations and meetings and so on, a lot of people were asking me, those seem overpowered. Those seem good. Like, won't everyone just want to be a werewolf or a vampire? And of course, being as people who are familiar with the lore, being a vampire werewolf carries certain weaknesses, vulnerability to fire in the case of a vampire, and a certain amount of rage if you're a werewolf, and temper and sort of non-permanence to the ability to be one. So they have some weaknesses associated with them, but on the whole, those abilities are pretty cool. It's pretty awesome to roll around as a werewolf and pounce on things and knock them down and stuff like that. And my answer was always, well, if you take a look at what's in the Fighters Guild, there's this whole slew of anti-monster slaying or monster slaying abilities. Things like you pull out a crossbow and shoot them with a silver bolt, or you can lay down this trap that when it catches undead, it just incinerates them. So you have all these options that you could specifically deal with it. So my expectation is that we'll never really have an overwhelming vampire population in PvP, because if that happens, then all the people are going to be like, well, screw this, I'm going to go become a monster slayer and just start hunting vampires.
Sure.
and I'm pretty sure people would have fun doing that. And so, and they would do that until this vampire inflation was beaten into submission, and then maybe people would do things. So, that's a pretty direct example of the ability interplay. But I like it a lot just because it involves a number of things that a number of player fantasies that I think people would find really exciting.
Yeah, sure. It's the idea that in its simplest form, it's rock, paper, scissors. If there's too many people playing as scissors, well, you're going to get a lot more rocks playing the game. So, yeah, that's great. You have the vampires just as well as you have the vampire slayers. So people can live out their Dawn Guard fantasies. And
then of course, the other key is you need to have there to be a good counter to the vampire. I mean, the vampire slayer abilities, right? What am I going to do if I run into a whole bunch of vampire slayers and I'm a vampire? Well, I can do these things to mitigate it. I have maybe I want to have a deflect bolt shield so that I can deal with the fact that people are going to be shooting silver crossbow bolts at me, and that could be a problem. So you don't want it to just be rock, paper, scissors, right? You want the one that has 5 in it. What is it, like Lizard Spock or something, right?
Oh, Big Bang Theory reference.
Super weird. Yeah. So something along those lines, right? You just keep making sure that the counter is something else from some other tree, and then people put that on, and then and it just keeps going in a big old circle.
Now, I have to point out, silver crossbows, is that a joke, or are we getting crossbows in the Elder Scrolls Online?
Well, the ability I'm talking about in particular, silver bolts, which is in the Fighters Guild, it's sort of a small crossbow that you pull out,
okay.
And you pull it out for a single shot. It's pretty low, and you fire off a silver round. So it's really specialized for killing the undead.
Sure.
But it does do damage. It's not like it's a useless weapon against humanoids, but it's definitely optimized for taking down the undead.
Yeah, it's one of those specialized abilities, and I think I remember now that the community had asked a while back about how Zenimax was going to approach things like, Morrowind had throwing knives and javelins and things like that, and they're much more inherent to your actual abilities. The Templar has his javelin that he throws, or a Nightblade might throw some knives, where you have a Fighters Guild guy that can pull out a crossbow, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of instances of one-offs like what you're saying. And then, of course, we have our I believe it's nine unique weapon types available. And of course, in and amongst our plans is how are we going to expand on the different weapon types? What are they going to be? I'm not going to tell any to you right now, but
dang it.
We're thinking new weapons and what you might see in the future. So, feel free to continue to post in forums about what your favorite weapon is. And
I want a scythe. I want a spear. That's pretty much all I want.
I've heard some crazy things. I've heard somebody wants a slingshot. I don't know why they would want a slingshot, but gosh, some weapon maniacs out
boomerang. There. Definitely a boomerang.
Boomerang, sure. All
right, Nick. Well, before we wrap this episode up, did you have any last thoughts, anything you'd like to share before we close it out?
Well, I'll talk about what's absolutely the most exciting for me right now, which is I'm finally getting to see this game that I've really worked on for so long, get the thing that an MMO really needs, which is a community. And we've been seeing this happen in our beta forums, and for the people who aren't in the beta forums, just in fan sites and community sites, people really getting excited and getting banded together about this game. And that's probably the most exciting thing in the world to me is the opportunity to interact with all the fans and give them the game that they've really been asking for and looking for. So I would always encourage everyone, no matter what site you're at. Odds are pretty good there's a dev out there reading it, and we never respond because we can't, but we read it. Even those messages that are like, "Hey, devs, read this," we read those. And and I really encourage you to write those things down, write the game that you want it to be, because if it's not, if you don't think it is right now, there's still time. There's time for us to adjust it, and if you already are sold, then great. I'm really just excited to begin to have interaction with you. I probably also just opened it up to a whole bunch of like, "Hey, Nick, read this."
You totally did.
Probably, yeah, exactly right. Well, there are a lot of passionate fans, and we're all cheering for you guys, because this project is something that we didn't know was even possible until the Elder Scrolls Online. You know, being able to play the Elder Scrolls games, but with friends in an MMO setting with PvP and PvE and stuff like that is, oh man, it excites us to no end. And the fact that you guys actually read that feedback and listen to things, you know, there's uproars going up all the time, but it's because the fans are really passionate, and the fact that you guys listen only feeds into that so much more. And can I just say thank you for coming on the cast with us today, because we know and we're very aware that not a lot of developers would do this. A lot of developers have that kind of, I call it the white gold crystal tower mentality, where they're up there and we're down here, the unwashed masses. But the fact that you were able to do this with us today is just awesome, and it inspires a whole lot of confidence into this game and into your community, and we just really appreciate it.
Well, you know, it was a real pleasure being on, and as you say, there's nothing special about us devs. You know, sometimes we have the advantage of some data that not everyone gets the chance to see, but you know, at the end of the day, we're a bunch of guys who are really excited to be working on and to play the next Elder Scrolls game. So, you know, we're in there with you guys too. That's the way I look at it anyway.
Awesome. Well, we're all on the edge of our seats, and I apologize for going all adoring fan on you just then, but I felt it needed to be said. It just needed to be put out there. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, you have been tuning into the ShoddyCast and ESO Weekly. Thank you so much for joining us for this special edition of ESO Weekly. Don't forget to like this video and share it with everyone you know. I have been Josh.
And I've been Kyle.
And that has been Nick. Don't forget to remember the Chalamo. We'll catch you later.
Bye.
Yes, my Eek loves books and loves the ShoddyCast too. Why not kill many birds with single stone and click the Audible link in the description below. Choose any audiobook from thousands for free. You must trust my Eek on these things.